So NFL free agency officially began yesterday with the start of the legal tampering period, and it has been crazy so far with a ton of news coming out, and especially a bunch of news regarding the Philadelphia Eagles moving forward, including multiple of their free agents leaving, some of them staying, and plenty of rumors surrounding the team and things that they could do moving forward into the future. And free agency is just getting started for the Eagles as they have a lot more to do. And what could potentially be the next domino to fall for the Philadelphia Eagles? Well, in this video, we're going to talk about everything that has happened so far in Eagles free agency, as well as what could potentially be coming in the future for the team. Before we do that, make sure you go subscribe to the channel for more consistent Philadelphia Eagles content coming throughout the entire offseason and through this free agency period. You're not going to want to miss it, so make sure you subscribe and turn on notifications. Now, with that being said, let's get into the video. And we're starting off this video with some breaking news as the Philadelphia Eagles have just agreed to terms with former Seahawks running back Rashad Penny. And this obviously answers some questions in terms of where the Eagles are going to go in regards to the running back position, as it seems like they're going to roll with a running back by committee system featuring Kenny Gainwell and now Rashad Penny. And overall, I like this signing. Rashad Penny is a player that has a very high ceiling, very high upside, but he just hasn't got a super big opportunity to prove what he can do. But in his career so far with the Seahawks, he's been very successful. The past 2 seasons, he's averaged over 6 yards per carry, and in short stints, like Ian Rappaport said, he has been one of the better backs in the NFL. And he's also a very physical player, and he will definitely benefit from playing behind this Philadelphia Eagles offensive line. And I'm super excited to have him moving forward. The one question when it comes to Rashad Penny is his health, as he's been pretty injury prone throughout the course of his entire career. So that'll be something to keep your eye on moving forward with Rashad Penny and the Eagles. As of now, I don't know the terms of the deal yet, how long it is or how much it's for, but just off face value, I like the Eagles addition of Rashad Penny, and I think he's going to have a big impact. And I'm excited to see what he's going to bring to the offense next year. And this is coming just after I finished editing the video, so this is going to be an add-on. So if it seems a little out of place, that's probably why. And I may have to cut the part about Austin Ekeler a little later in the video. So the first piece of news regarding the Philadelphia Eagles and free agency is that linebacker TJ Edwards signed a 3-year deal with the Chicago Bears worth around $19 million, and that's going to put his average annual salary at just over $6 million per season. And obviously, you know, the Eagles couldn't pay everybody. We knew that heading into free agency, and TJ Edwards, unfortunately, is the first casualty of that misfortune. And even though TJ Edwards has been a very good player for the Philadelphia Eagles over the past couple seasons especially, he turned himself from an undrafted player into a player that's now towards the top of the league every single season in tackles. It seems like he was a guy that the Eagles were okay with letting walk. And that could potentially be for the reason that they have a guy that they're confident in that can come in and play next year, and that guy is Nakobe Dean. He was the Eagles' 3rd-round draft pick in the 2022 NFL draft. He was labeled the steal of the draft by a lot of people, and he didn't really get a chance to play because he was sitting on the bench behind TJ Edwards and Kaiser White this past season. So he's going to come in this season with a huge opportunity to start, and I expect him to play well because in the opportunities he did have last year, even though they were very limited, he showed a lot of ability and he flashed his potential. But even with Nakobe Dean stepping up and probably filling in for that TJ Edwards role, what are the Eagles going to do with the other linebacker position? Maybe you could go out and try to bring back a guy like Kaiser White, who even though he didn't have as great a season as TJ Edwards, his value is also going to be lower than TJ Edwards. So maybe you go out and try and bring him back for the cheap for maybe a 1 or 2 year deal. Or you could look at a guy like Bobby Wagner. It seems like the Cowboys have interest in him right now, but he would also be a very good fit for the Philadelphia Eagles next to Nakobe Dean. He can mentor him. He would just be very, very productive. Obviously, he was an All-Pro last season with the Rams, but the only way I see this happening is if he were to take a discount to try to win a Super Bowl with the Eagles in 2023. I think that would be great, but again, we don't know exactly what's going to happen. But either way, losing TJ Edwards is tough because he has been such a good player for the Eagles over the past couple seasons especially, and the Chicago Bears got a really, really good player, and I think this is a really good signing by them, and they've been really active so far in the early stages of free agency. So, but yeah, good luck to TJ Edwards in Chicago. But following this bad news that TJ Edwards would be leaving, the Eagles actually got some good news. Jason Kelce, Hall of Famer, All-Pro center, probably the best center in the NFL, re-signed with the Philadelphia Eagles for a 1-year, $14.25 million deal. And the terms just came out today. The news that he was coming back was officially announced yesterday. Obviously, you know, this is great news. Jason Kelce is just the leader in that Eagles locker room, and he's crucial to the Eagles' success. He's just been a staple of this Philadelphia Eagles franchise, their team, their organization for a long time now, and it's super great to have him back. So obviously that's probably the best piece of news that the Eagles got yesterday. But following this great news, the Eagles then got their worst news of the entire day. And that is that star defensive tackle Javon Hargrave would be signing a 4-year deal with the San Francisco 49ers worth $80 million. And obviously, this hurts. I think everyone knew that the Eagles were going to lose Javon Hargrave this offseason because they simply just couldn't afford him. He's now being paid $20 million per season on average with the 49ers, and this is a price tag the Eagles just couldn't afford to match as they don't have enough cap space simply. But despite us knowing that the Eagles were going to lose Hargrave, I don't think we expected him to go to the 49ers. I think I heard a lot of teams like, the Browns and the Bears and the Seahawks, teams like that. I didn't hear anything about him going to the 49ers, but obviously, that's where he ended up signing. And I think this is really unfortunate for the Eagles because the San Francisco 49ers are probably their biggest rival in the conference. They already have an incredible defense, and now adding Javon Hargrave to that makes it even worse. He had a career-high 11 sacks last season with the Eagles, and obviously if you put him on that extremely talented defense like the 49ers have, he's going to benefit from playing alongside guys like Nick Bosa and Fred Warner and other guys they have on that defensive side of the ball in San Fran. So that just adds some intensity to what seems like a rivalry on the rise between the Eagles and the 49ers. But now we got to ask the question for the Eagles, where are they going to go with defensive tackle? Obviously, Jordan Davis is going to be a starter this next season. Hopefully, he's able to show us something and turn into the player that the Eagles hope he can be, and he needs to show some improvements as a pass rusher as well, as that's probably his biggest weakness. So hopefully, he can do that next season. But at the other defensive tackle position, you're looking at Fletcher Cox potentially leaving in free agency, and the Eagles are going to need to find a solution at that second defensive tackle spot. So could the Eagles try to bring back Fletcher Cox on a cheap deal? I don't know. Maybe. If Fletcher Cox is open to the idea of taking less money to return to the Eagles, a team that he's been with his entire career, the team that drafted him, the team that he's had all his success with, I think it'd be great for both sides to have a reunion and for Fletcher Cox to return to the Eagles at least for one more season. But if not, the Eagles have to go somewhere else at that defensive tackle position. So maybe it could be in the draft, maybe it could be some other free agent, but I don't know exactly what that route's going to be. So that's something to look out for regarding the Eagles moving forward. And then the Eagles also got some news of some more departures later in the day, including one being Andre Dillard, left tackle, as he decided to sign with the Tennessee Titans for a 3-year deal. And this was a guy who was a first-round pick of the Philadelphia Eagles in 2019, but he just never really panned out. Even though I think Andre Dillard is a good player, he just wasn't going to get his opportunity here with the Eagles because the Eagles have Jordan Mailata at that left tackle position. So I think this was a guy we knew the Eagles were going to end up losing, and I'm happy for him as he's going to go get a chance to start with another team. And I think he's actually a really good pass blocker, and he'll probably show that with the Titans. I do wish the Eagles could have traded him so we could have gotten something back for him because we knew he wasn't going to come back in free agency, but hey, it is what it is. And good luck to Andre Dillard in Tennessee. And then the other news we got regarding an Eagles player leaving is that Marcus Epps, former starting safety for the Eagles, is signing a 2-year deal with the Las Vegas Raiders for worth around $12 million. And Marcus Epps was a serviceable safety in his time here, and he went from an undrafted player to a player that is a serviceable starter in the NFL. So good for him, and good for him for going and getting a decent amount of money with a new team. But I don't think this upsets too many Eagles fans, as he was probably one of the weaker links on that Philadelphia Eagles defense this year. I myself don't personally think he's a bad player, but I don't think he's a great player. But his signing with the Raiders on the first day of free agency, the first day of the legal tampering period, shows me that he wasn't exactly a huge priority for the Eagles. And I think Marcus Epps leaving the Eagles could potentially mean that the Eagles are a lot more focused and really locked in on trying to re-sign safety C.J. Gardner-Johnson, because I don't think the Eagles are comfortable with losing both of their starting safeties this offseason, and in fact their main priority, which I think we all knew, but nonetheless is going to be bringing back CJ GJ to the team next year in 2023 and beyond. And yesterday we got yet another report saying that the Eagles are continuing to make a strong push for CJ Gardner-Johnson, and it's kind of seeming like it's more and more likely that Gardner-Johnson could be returning to the Eagles in 2023, but we also did get a little bit of bad news on that front, as another potential suitor for CJ GJ has emerged, and that team is the Cincinnati Bengals, as they lost both their starting safeties in Jesse Bates and Vonn Bell yesterday on the first day of free agency. And I think the Jesse Bates departure affects the Eagles in multiple ways. Number one, because obviously him leaving creates a hole at that safety position for the Bengals, and now obviously they have interest in Gardner-Johnson, but Jesse Bates got paid by the Atlanta Falcons. He got a 4-year contract worth around $64 million, which is going to be about an average annual salary of $16 million per season. So that could potentially set the value in the market at that safety position for a guy like CJ Gardner-Johnson, who's also looking to get paid this offseason. And I think what this could potentially mean about his value is that it might be a little bit less than Jesse Bates, because why would the Bengals not re-sign Jesse Bates, who's been a guy that's been on their roster, been a captain, been one of their best players over the past few seasons, for that $16 million asking price that he got paid by the Atlanta Falcons, and then have interest in a guy like CJ Gardner-Johnson if he's just going to get paid the same thing. So what I think that means is that Gardner-Johnson's value is probably a little bit less than what Jessie Bates' value is, at least as of now, which might be a good thing for the Philadelphia Eagles because obviously they're not going to want to pay that $16 million per year price tag for CJ Gardner-Johnson. And now I honestly think it's just a race between the Eagles and the Bengals to sign CJ GJ. I mean, yesterday there was a lot of stuff going on. CJ Gardner-Johnson was on Twitter retweeting and replying to different Bengals players, and then he ended up deleting those tweets later in the day, and then there was rumors that if the Eagles and the Bengals gave him the same offer, then he would choose the Eagles over the Bengals, which makes a lot of sense because I think it's pretty obvious that he wants to remain in Philadelphia. It's just all about what they can offer him. So if the Eagles meet the asking price of CJ Gardner-Johnson and the Bengals meet that, I think he's 100% going to choose Philadelphia. It's just a matter of whether the Eagles are willing to go as high as CJ Gardner-Johnson wants, and obviously we don't know that price quite yet, but I think the news about Jessie Bates and everything like that is a promising sign because I don't think it's quite as high as I initially thought it was. So things are seeming a little bit more promising that CJ Gardner-Johnson could potentially return to the Eagles, but why hasn't this happened yet, and why haven't the Eagles really done much in terms of signing and re-signing other players in free agency so far? Well, the fact of the matter is that the Eagles just don't have that much cap space. They're sitting at around $8 million right now, and obviously that might have changed at this point because they just signed Jason Kelce to that $14 million deal. So the Eagles are going to need to find a way to create some more cap space and create, a little bit more room for them to go out and bring back some of these players and sign other players in free agency. And the way they can do that is by restructuring contracts. And the first guy whose contract they have to restructure is Lane Johnson. I thought we were going to get news about that already, maybe yesterday, maybe even earlier than that. Obviously, it hasn't happened yet, so hopefully the Eagles are able to figure something out on that front. But then the big one is the Darius Slay situation. So next season, Darius Slay is scheduled to have a cap hit of $26 million, and the Eagles just cannot afford to keep that the way it is. They either have to restructure his contract, they have to extend him, which is also going to free up some cap space depending on how they do it, or recently, we just got a report saying that the Eagles have given Darius Slay permission to seek a trade, so they might have to trade him as well. They have to find a way to get rid of that $26 million cap hit and reduce it. And I would love to have Darius Slay back. I think he's a great player. He's one of the best cornerbacks the Eagles have had in a long time, and I love what he's brought here to Philadelphia. I think he's been a great presence in the locker room. I think he's turned himself into a great leader, and obviously he wants to stay here in Philadelphia as well. He just recently said on his podcast that he wants to finish his career in Philadelphia. So hopefully they're able to come to an agreement somehow that satisfies both Slay and the Eagles in terms of creating cap space while also giving Slay the compensation he wants. Because I love Slay and I want to have him back on the roster, but at the end of the day, this is a business, so that's why you see this whole situation playing out. So hopefully they're able to figure something out on that front soon. And in addition to all this news about Darius Slay, the Eagles are also facing questions regarding their other starting cornerback from the 2022 season in James Bradberry, as obviously he's a free agent. And I think for the large part of this offseason, myself and a lot of other Eagles fans expected that James Bradberry was going to be gone, but recently we just got some good news regarding that, as just before the free agency period started, on Sunday, James Bradberry spoke with Josina Anderson of ESPN, and he said this: "I know there's definitely interest from the Eagles. I would love to return. I see how bright the future is. I'm just waiting to hear on the exact terms from them. They told me whoever calls, just make sure I also give them a chance to match." So obviously, it sounds like it's becoming more and more likely that the Eagles are going to try to retain James Bradberry in free agency as well. Obviously, nothing has happened yet, and I haven't heard too much about other teams since the free agency period has started in terms of them being interested in bringing in James Bradberry. So we'll see what happens on that front. I would also love to have James Bradberry back. He was an All-Pro last season, and him and Darius Slay formed an incredible cornerback duo, and I would love to bring him back. I think he had one of the best years, if not the best year of his entire career last year. But of course I want all these guys. I want CJ back. I want Slay back. I want Bradberry back, but this is the way that I see it. You're not going to be able to bring all three of those guys back. They simply just can't afford to pay every single one of those players, but they also can't afford to lose every single one of those players, because at that point, you've lost Epps, and then you've lost every other player that was starting in your secondary as well, aside from Avonte Maddox. So I think bringing back one or two would be a big win. Obviously, CJ Gardner-Johnson is the number one priority. I think if you get him back, that is a huge win, and I think it nullifies or softens the blow of losing a lot of these other guys on the defensive side of the ball. But if you're able to bring back CJ and Slay, or CJ and Bradberry, that is a huge, huge win, and it bodes well for the Eagles defense moving forward, because obviously it's easier to plug one or two holes rather than just, having to rebuild the entire secondary. So hopefully they're able to get something done on that front, and we'll see how that all plays out. But so far, I've just been talking about all the guys that have left the Eagles or the Eagles had on their roster before and could bring back. I haven't even gotten a chance to talk about some of the other guys the Eagles could go out and potentially pursue in free agency this offseason, and they got plenty of options. The first guy that I saw was Emmanuel Moseley. Bro, he had to sign with the Lions just when I finished editing. Another guy we've obviously talked about multiple times is Bobby Wagner. Again, we lost TJ Edwards, and the Eagles are going to need to have a guy to fill in alongside Nakobe Dean next season at that second linebacker position, and I think Bobby Wagner would be a perfect fit, assuming he takes a pay cut to come to Philadelphia and try to win a Super Bowl. And then you have rumors about Adam Thielen, who was just cut by the Minnesota Vikings. Darius Slay is trying to recruit him to the Eagles, which is interesting behavior from Slay, because it seems like, you know, him recruiting players to the Eagles doesn't exactly make it seem like he's going anywhere. But regarding Adam Thielen, I really don't think the Eagles should go out and make a play for him. I think he'd be too expensive, and I don't think wide receiver is the biggest position of need for the Eagles right now, and I think they should spend money in other areas. Although Adam Thielen is a great player, he was one of the best receivers in the league for a long time, and now obviously he's still a very good receiver, even though he's slowing down a little bit. I don't think the Eagles should go after him, but you know, with news like this and all these rumors about other guys the Eagles could add and guys that the Eagles could bring back from last year's roster, there's a lot of stuff going on right now regarding the Philadelphia Eagles. Eagles free agency, the Eagles offseason, all that is just kicking off. It's going to be a wild ride. Tons of stuff is going to be happening over the next few days, weeks, and months, and I cannot wait to see what happens. But if you guys don't want to miss any coverage of any of that from my end, make sure you go subscribe and turn on notifications so you don't miss any of it. Drop a like on this video to help push it out to other people. If you want to watch more Eagles content, you can go watch this right here. I apologize, this has been a very chaotic video. We've had a lot to cover, but that's just the nature of the offseason sometimes. So yeah, with that being said, that's pretty much all I got for this video, and I'll see you guys in the next one.